Today on Rob's Garage, we're talking about how you can take your car on the racetrack. Welcome back to Rob's Garage. I'm Rob. This is my garage. And this is a little video about taking your car racing. So you've probably watched Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, sports car racing, and you see these guys on TV or ladies on TV, and you see just how simple and how easy they make it look. And you think to yourself, oh, I can do that. But that's because they are professionals and they are so consistent and so good at what they do that they make it look easy. But the reality is racing is not that simple. Having said that, racing is a lot of fun. So if you have any interest at all, if you've ever had a desire to get on the racetrack, no matter where you are in your stage of life, I encourage you to get your helmet, take your car, go out and experience it for yourself. Once you do, you'll really discover, is this something that I'm made for? Is this something I want to pursue? Or is this something I'd rather just watch the professionals do on TV? Now, the days of us finding a Greg Ray or a Kimi Räikkönen who starts racing in their late teens, early 20s and becomes Indy 500 champion or Formula One world champion, those days are probably long gone, because now if you really want to make it, you're going to be starting in karting when you're like 4 or 5 years old. That's just the reality. It's so competitive. However, you can still have a ton of fun even if this doesn't become your career. Now, the most pure way to get started in racing is to go karting. Even Ayrton Senna said that karting is the most pure form of motorsports he ever experienced. And I agree. But the problem is, once you have driven some fast street cars and you get that passion, or you get that taste of speed in a car, some people have a hard time going back to a smaller vehicle like a go-kart. This video is not about karting. I'm happy to make a video about karting another time, but it's for those of you who are out there who just, you've got a sports car, you've got a fast daily driver, and you want to see what it's like to take it on the racetrack. This video is for you. So how do you get started? Well, I'm going to walk you through my journey. Now, I'm not a professional race car driver by any means, but I will give you my real world experience that hopefully you can translate to help you. And by the time we're done, you're going to learn 5 tips that I think every novice should know to properly be prepared to go on a racetrack. Let me start with my history. Again, I started racing karts back in the early 2000s. Raced a Yamaha KT100 for a while, which is kind of an ancient engine nowadays. Had a lot of fun doing that, but then got married, started having kids, and had to put the racing on hold for a bit. Fast forward 2008, I got a BMW 335i twin turbo. I boosted that thing out, tuned it. It was a lot of fun for the street, but then I thought, well, I really have always had a passion for racing. I want to see what it's like to actually take this thing racing. And so my first experience racing was autocrossing. Now, if you're not familiar with autocrossing, it's essentially where you sign up for an event that's got a massive parking lot or some other large paved area, and the track is configured with a set of cones. And you drive around the cones, and you've got to go in the pattern that they prescribe, and it's a timed event. So one person, one car at a time, sometimes 2, depending on the configuration, but it's timed. And at the end of the day, who's got the fastest lap within the class is the winner. I did okay my first season. I think I finished 3rd in my class overall, and had a lot of fun doing it. But eventually started having more kids, and so I couldn't continue. I had to put the autocrossing on hold for a few years until 2013 when I got the M3 here. It was my daily driver for several years. But again, I had that bug in me, and I wanted to go racing. So started to do autocrossing again, but it just wasn't enough. For me, I loved a lot about autocrossing. I loved how it taught you car control, but I really want, for some of these types of cars, I really want to see what it was like to go on a full-fledged race course. And so in 2014, I started to do track days, or high-performance driving events, where you'll go on a real racetrack. And usually when you're starting out as a novice, you'll be on the track with other cars, but there's no passing allowed. Or if there is passing, you've got to point by the person behind you, a signal essentially to let them know that they can go by you. And some racetracks, depending on the traffic and the configuration, there'll only be certain locations on the track where you're allowed to even pass. So I did that for 2014 and 15. I did several track days, and then again started having more kids. So took time off of the racing yet again. And in 2022, I decided to get back into racing. I'm now doing what's called time attack events, where you're actually in competition with other people on the track. And it's no longer, at least in my level, it's no longer point by passing, it's open passing. So you're going fast enough and you're with people that are experienced enough to play nice with one another, kind of gentleman's racing, let people by. There's no sense in time attack events to hold other people up, because you're just slowing yourself down too. So that's what I did throughout 2022. I raced in a series called the Bimmer Challenge. Bimmer Challenge accepts any BMW or BMW manufactured vehicle, including Mini Coopers and the new Toyota Supras. All right, so that's a little bit about my history, and I think a path that a lot of people take. So if those of you who are novices out there and you're wondering how do you get to racing, that's a great way to start. Begin with autocrossing, get into track days. Once you get comfortable with track days, find a time attack series that you can participate in, and then from there, if you're good enough and you've got enough money, go full-fledged racing. Now for my 5 tips for all novices out there. First of all, you might have done a lot of high performance upgrades to make your car go fast on the street, so you're thinking, great, I'm ready to go racing on a track. But I have news for you. When you're starting out in racing, it's not how fast your car can go, but how good you take the line, how good you take corners, and in order to do that, you've got to know how to stop your car, how to properly brake. So get yourself some good brake fluid. You're going to need to get something that has a boiling point of at least 600 degrees. I'm using StopTech Racing at the moment. I've previously run Redline. I thought that was actually better maybe than the StopTech. I've had people recommend the Motul recently, so maybe I'll change over to Motul soon. But don't run street brake fluid when you try to do a track event. Why? Because you're going to be pushing on those brakes so hard that they're going to overheat. And if you boil the brake fluid, you're going to end up with spongy brakes. So, and potentially you're going to get air in the system. So make sure you run some high performance brake fluid. Second of all, change out your street brake pads for some form of a racing pad. Now, I ran these Paget RSL 29s last year. They lasted pretty well. They're an endurance pad. I'm now switching to an endless brake pad this year. And previously I also ran Carbotex. Carbotex I think are probably my favorite so far, but they don't have a very long life. I go through a set of Carbotech pads about every 3 track days. So I'm trying to find that right balance myself at the moment. But point being is you want to upgrade your brake pads. You don't need to run even advanced rotors. It would help, but you can still even run your OEM rotors and your OEM calipers for certain, but make sure you put a different type of pad, at least on your front calipers. You want something that's really going to grip quickly. You brake very differently on the track versus the street. When you're on the street, you want to slowly hit that brake pedal and come to a nice smooth stop. You're racing on the track, you smash the brake pedal as hard as you can and then let off. And so it's a different experience, and you've got to have the right pads to support it. Tip number 3, get yourself a 4-point racing harness. Now, a 4-point racing harness is not nearly as safe as a 5 or 6 point. 5 or 6 point will prevent submarining or sliding underneath the seatbelt by having anchors down between your legs. But a 4-point harness isn't bad to start out with, because it at least will hold you in tighter than the OEM seatbelts. Not that you can't go on the track with an OEM seatbelt, but at least the 4-point, if properly installed, it's going to hold you in tighter. To install, they plug in with the OEM receptacles in front and in back there, and then it's just a couple bolts you'll have to locate to mount. Slight upgrade, certainly will hold you in a little tighter than an OEM seatbelt. Tip number 4, make sure you have decent tow hooks. Now, of course, you can use OEM tow hooks, but you're going to want to make sure you've got 2 of them. Hopefully, you'll never have to use them. I have never had to use a tow hook on the track, but it's best practice to have one, because if you do go off track and the safety crew has to tow your car, they're just going to get you off track as soon as they can. and your car might get damaged in the process. So make sure you've got a tow hook in the front and a tow hook in the back. Tip number 5, make sure you do a proper safety inspection before every autocross or track day event. For example, check your tires, make sure you got proper tread. Starting out with just high performance street tires and not some full race tire is a much better way to get started in racing, in fact, because it will help you feel the track and feel your mistakes much better. When you've got really good tires, it tends to cover up your mistakes. Those are my 5 tips for any novice who's interested in going racing. Now, of course, whether you're doing autocross, track days, time attack events, you are going to need a proper safety gear such as a helmet and a Hans device. Ideally, if you're just starting out, I'd recommend renting that equipment from a sanctioning body that's hosting the event. Once you've done it once or twice, though, you'll know if you're hooked. And at that stage, definitely go out and buy yourself proper helmet and a Hans device. Once you graduate from autocrossing to track days, you're going to want to start tracking your performance, your lap times. Now, there's a lot of apps you can download. I can give you my pros and cons of each in a subsequent video. But my advice when you're starting out is just to rent a transponder from the sanctioning body. You'll get the most accurate times that way, and you won't be messing around with trying to, touch an app on your phone when you should be focused on the road. Now, with respect to cameras, if you've got a GoPro or some other action camera, make sure that it doesn't become a distraction. Once you get going on the track, you don't want the camera to fall. You don't want to have to be touching buttons. You just want to be focused on the road. So if you do put a camera in, which it's great because then you can actually replay the footage and learn from your driving mistakes, then by all means put a camera in. Just be very careful to mount it securely and make sure you don't have to be messing around with it while you're driving. I hope you learned something from today's video. If you're a fellow racer and you've got better advice, please put it in the comments so we can, as a community, learn from one another and share our knowledge with novices out there. If you learned something from today's video, then do me a favor, hit the like button, do yourself a favor, subscribe to the channel. Maybe you can follow along on future track events that I participate in, as well as upgrades to my various vehicles, maintenance, and other DIY projects. Hey, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on down the road.